Nothing derails an entire offense, team, and organization like constant, crushing, back-breaking turnovers. Dak Prescott arguably cost the Cowboys an entire season with his league-leading 15 interceptions, then 2 more in the playoffs. But they weren't all his fault. It is shocking that he led the league in picks despite missing 5 games due to injury, but there is so much more that goes into an interception than just the quarterback throwing a bad pass. That's exactly what we'll dive into today, why there has to be more blame put on the receivers and coaches, not just Dak. And starting with the receivers, the first thing is that sure, there's always the tip ball interceptions. Dak throws these perfectly, but they just got flipped right up into the air. I don't know how we don't have a separate stat for these, but that is truly for another day. And the second and more important thing are the other interceptions that are on the receivers that only the film can tell us. Let's talk about what it truly means when a quarterback and receiver are not on the same page. We hear broadcasters say it all the time, but nobody really gets into what that really means, so let's get to it. The main example is when a quarterback and receiver read the coverage differently post-snap. On defense, every coverage can be grouped into 2 families, middle of the field open, also known as MOFO, MOFO, and middle of the field closed, MOFC, which both refer to where the safeties are positioned. Middle of the field open means there are 2 deep safeties, so there's an open space in between them for like a post route. Actually, thinking of it as will a post be open or not is a great way of thinking about it. So then in the middle of the field closed, where there's just 1 deep safety, that post route would be closed for business. Every coverage is either middle of the field open or middle of the field closed. Quarterbacks and receivers both have to be able to read which one it is on every play, since certain routes adjust based on where the safeties are. Well, this is where the Cowboys had major issues. We'll start with an example of where they were successful, just so you guys can get an idea of what it looks like, where Dak and CeeDee Lamb both correctly read it's middle of the field closed because it's 1 high safety. CD has a route that can either attack the post or break down in front of him. He'll do the latter, because that post route isn't there with the middle of the field closed, so he correctly breaks down in front of him by crossing his face. Then so we can see the other way it works, the Bears roll into 2 high middle of the field open, so now he converts his route to bend into the middle open space even though he doesn't get the ball. These are all pretty simple looks, they're clearly defined. But we are watching NFL football, where defenses do whatever it takes to cause that breakdown in communication. Here the Bucs are playing a form of quarters coverage, which has 4 deep defenders. And because there are 2 deep safeties, the middle of the field is open, kinda. CD can convert his route to a post or dig, so pre-snap him and Dak are reading it's open, so he should run the post. But after the snap, watch how the safeties tighten up inside, leaving it technically open. But here, QB and receiver are on the exact same page, and despite the route conversion designed to go to the post based on the coverage, they both read it out and CD runs the dig. However, this year the issue was, they weren't always on the same page. Against a more exotic coverage where the Packers did an even better job than the Bucs of giving a challenging post-snap look, this is when disaster strikes. They're showing this really weird coverage where it's hard to tell what it is. It could be middle of the field open, it could be closed, but at the snap they roll into Tampa 2 zone, which typically is open with the 2 deep safeties, and Tampa means there's a linebacker kind of running backwards, covering up that open space. Think of Brian Urlacher back in the day starting up close and sprinting backwards. Well, the Packers use a 3rd safety to play that middle role, so you tell me. Is this middle of the field open? Is it closed? CD thinks it's the first one and he should split the safeties, and Dak thinks it's the second where he should cut underneath. In my opinion, Dak is right here. CD should cross the safety's face and break it down underneath, but he sees these 2 safeties way deep and decides he'll try and beat Rudy Ford over the top. A few weeks prior, the same thing happened against the Bears, where he reads one thing, Dak reads another, and the 2 are not on the same page at all. The Bears are showing a 2 deep safety coverage with the middle open, but at the snap roll one of the safeties into a deep 3rd in cover 3 zone, where he replaces the corner. So this is once again kind of a confusing look. Based on the coverage, it's middle of the field closed with the 1 high safety, since the other is now filling the cornerback's duties. But with the one high safety shaded a bit towards CD, he reads this as middle of the field open with all this space. Again, Dak reads it correctly, and once again, interception. He thought CD was going to cross the face of the safety just like in the Packers example. He even said so to the media after the game. He said that CD saw something different. Not being on the same page was the offense's biggest issue in 2022, and while way more of that needs to be put on the receivers, not enough is being placed on their now fired offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. Coaching your quarterback and receivers to see the defense through the same set of eyes is critical. If a quarterback throws to one area and the receiver's not there, nothing is ever going to work. This goes hand in hand with some of the questions I have about Moore's play calling, where his in-season tendencies became a little too predictable. The Cowboys are in this tight bunch formation, and they're trying to hit this speed out to the right. With Kendall Fuller pretty far off in zone coverage, this should be a gimme, but he jumps the route and intercepts it. How'd he know this was coming? The play literally right before they tried something similar, attack him underneath with his off-zone coverage. And while Dak threw this way later, Fuller already almost picks this off, which brings us back to the actual interception. Now he's all rared up and ready to go. But on top of that, the levels of badness of Kellen Moore's play calling actually goes even deeper. This is a pretty unique formation for the Cowboys with these three lined up tight like this. Usually when you condense a receiver inside, it's to get him closer to being able to run a crossing route, or so he can break outside. Fuller already knows this, and he has done his homework. The last time the Cowboys were in this tight bunch formation was 2 weeks prior on the third play of the game, when they had the exact same personnel, in the exact same formation, running the exact same concept on both sides. They didn't target the speed out this time, but especially when a vet like Kendall Fuller is combing through tape and sees his formation, which you typically would run a speed out from this alignment, the offensive coordinator is not putting his players in a position to succeed. With all of that said, there is still a good amount of blame to put on Dak for sure. While Fuller had every opportunity to make a play on this ball based on Moore's predictable play calling, Dak also shows some of what made his interceptions shoot up as well. When you're attacking a zone defender underneath, you have to watch their body positioning, hips, and leverage. Yes, pre-snap Fuller is off the ball in zone, so it's a good look for the speed out. But when Dak is gearing up to throw, Fuller's hips aren't pointed away. He's ready to drive on this ball. Dak can't just throw it no matter what just because the look is good. Post-snap, this is bad. And then the throw? If you're putting this on the inside shoulder, you're cooked. This is a timed throw designed to go to the same single spot every time, which is outside. You are beating the corner with the throw because you're throwing it before he can get there. But when it's inside like this, you're getting picked every time. Dak struggled with reading defenders in the down. He'd struggled to read their positioning properly, like here where Kevin Byard is inside of Dalton Schultz. Schultz is breaking outside. And even though I think Dak is worried about Andrew Adams falling off, he throws it back shoulder, which is where Byard is, and he takes him to pick city. There was this weird play against the Colts where Stephon Gilmore is outside of Michael Gallup. Gallup is trying to get outside of him. But right when Dak is about to throw, do you want to throw an outbreaker here against Gilmore? Me neither. So these weird, uncharacteristic Dak struggles of not reading defenders properly caused a couple of his interceptions. Another area I saw him struggle was just purely from a talent perspective. He's probably in the 10 to 15-ish range in terms of arm talent. He's more than sufficient, but just not elite by any means. And that pops up on his interception reel. The Giants are playing cover 2 man, which is a 2-high safety middle of the field open coverage, so both Dak and CD know he's going to split the safeties up the middle. 2-man has each defender play man coverage from inside leverage to try and protect the inside to funnel the receivers towards the outside where the safeties are. They play trail technique on the vertical routes to defend anything underneath, so the safeties can stay over the top. But with Dak's limited arm strength, he actually throws this under CD going vertical, so it gets broken up by the defender. They try it again later because it's a good look, and they get the same exact coverage, but once again, on a really tough throw, Dak's arm talent just isn't elite enough to hit these consistently. The last bone I have to pick with him is just how unnecessary some of these interceptions were, both in terms of the coverage, but also the situation. 12 of his 15 interceptions came in the first half, 7 of 15 came when he was leading, 10 in the second quarter, and just 1 in the fourth. he did not have to push these balls like he did, so moving forward, his approach has to be adjusted. 10 of them came with him holding the ball more than 2.5 seconds, 9 of him when he wasn't pressured. He was holding the ball late into the down, while kept clean, while winning, and was still overly and unnecessarily aggressive. His 2 interceptions against the Niners knocked them out of the playoffs, losing 19-12, and capped off a pretty strange season. Dak is known more for his great pre- and post-snap ability, not so much his physical ability, which is why this over-aggressive, kind of wild nature was so out of character. Pair that with the fact the Cowboys have one of the best defenses in the league, and it's time for him to relax and become a little more conservative. That's what Mike McCarthy said they'd shift towards after all, which I think is a good sign for what is honestly a good offense. Dak Prescott is a good quarterback, and his aggression this year did allow him to make some brilliant throws. Now that Kellen Moore is gone, there's a clearer path for him and his receivers to get on the same page, especially after the snap, so these interceptions don't keep popping up. And with McCarthy taking over, it's possible the play calling will improve and not be so predictable. Dak needs to pick his spots when to be aggressive, because the Cowboys are loaded, especially on defense. They have everything in place to make a serious run, and now that they know their weaknesses, they can fix them and overpower teams with their strengths.